Hello folks, I'm Leo K. This is a no damage, no upgrades playthrough of Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, which was released in 2003 on PC. This is a segmented run rather than a no save or a single segment run. And with that out of the way, let's watch the opening cinematic.
Most people think time is like a river that flows swift and sure in one direction. But I have seen the face of time, and I can tell you, they are wrong. Time is an ocean in a storm. You may wonder who I am and why I say this. Sit down, and I will tell you a tale like none that you have ever heard. Know first that I am the son of Sharaman, a mighty king of Persia. On our way to Azad with a small company of men, we passed through India, where the promise of honor and glory tempted my father into a grievous error.
No, my son.
Your Majesty, I trust you will remember your promise. The Maharaja's treasure vaults lie within.
See how he rides. Like a warrior son.
Do you think I felt regret as I gazed upon the destruction we had wrought? Or at least humility at the speed with which a world can be transformed from a good world into a hell? If you think so, you are mistaken. For in that moment I thought of one thing only. The honor and glory I would bring my father by fighting like a warrior in my first battle.
So, Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time is most famous for its movement mechanics. This game was effectively the spiritual predecessor to Assassin's Creed, and you will notice some similarities, namely advanced movement, parkour, things like interactions with walls, things of that nature, as well as a very agile, acrobatic protagonist and sword combat. The combat in this game is strictly melee. The prince himself does not have any ranged actions. So you can see the first time you wall run, it does a cool dramatic slow motion shot, but that is an example of one of the movement actions we're going to be using a lot.
Many men that day sought to win honor and glory on the battlefield, that their king might say to them, as Khosrow said to Rustam, "You are the noblest of my warriors." From the moment my sword tasted blood, I knew this would not be my way. I would win my father's praise, not by killing, but by being the first to find the Maharaja's treasure vault and the wonders within.
So see here, the prince even says, I'm not going to win honor and glory by fighting, by killing, but by essentially being a thief, by finding the Dagger of Time, or whatever treasures lay in the treasure vault, and bringing them to my father. Like, that is his avenue to glory, that is his avenue to triumph. And we're essentially being very in character here. We're doing the same thing. Fighting these guys doesn't give us anything, so we have absolutely no reason to do it, because it just slows us down. It can show you the combat system, but there will be forced combat later against different kinds of enemies, and we will get to it when we get to it. These guys kind of get me stuck a little bit, but they move out of the way like decent gentlemen in time. There's a neat little skip coming up, which is used by nearly every speedrunner who plays this game. I think indeed every speedrunner who plays this game, where the game expects you to jump from column to column here, like pillar to pillar, but instead if you do a horizontal wall run and then jump after this curtain, you end up doing a diagonal jump at this railing, and then it lets you just skip a few
Shall I
seconds of
continue my story
gameplay.
from here, the next
Keep
time we're
up the
interrupted?
flow. This
Don't
game
worry.
is very fluid. Most of the
start the
Prince of
story from
Persia
here
games
next
are,
time.
in terms of movement, in terms of how you just move through a sequence of obstacles. It's very rhythmic. It's very, you know, you just keep up your movement and it feels great.
And there it lay, just out of reach, the Dagger of Time. There was a treasure I could carry with pride as a trophy of our victory. If I could only get there.
So technically right here, you can actually jump from here to the platform on the left there without having to do these wall runs, but I didn't know that at the time of recording, so I just, you know, ended up not doing it. And then here we have our first proper traps. You want to avoid these and not touch them, because if you do, you will take damage. This is my first no damage run of any kind I've done for a full game, so it was very interesting, very exciting for me to try, and I was wondering for a while if it would even be possible, but I think that it is. That was my thought process anyway. While I was playing this, I was like, I'm sure, or I'm, 70% sure you can no damage Sands of Time. As for why I chose to do it segmented, there are a few good reasons for this, but mainly it just comes down to things that are outside of the player's control. While Sands of Time is possible to no damage, it's not necessarily very practical to do so because of just moments the controls choose to respond in an unpredictable manner, or moments where Farah decides to shoot the prince in combat. And yes, you heard that right, Farah deciding to shoot the prince in combat. Basically, our helper AI, our allied NPC that we'll be journeying through this game with once we eventually meet up with her, she's an archer. She shoots arrows, and most of the time she shoots them at enemies, which is, it's very good. It's what we want. That's when she's being a good girl and doing her job. But unfortunately, there is a % chance that she does shoot the player with an arrow. You can make this less likely by just trying not to be in front of her, but unfortunately, you can't stare at her and the enemies all the time. So instead, this is part of the reason why it's a segmented run, is to prevent those moments of bad luck from just ruining our day. Here, the prince will acquire the Dagger of Time.
I had what I came for. It was time to get out. Now.
Also, pay attention to the UI here. Because the prince acquired the Dagger of Time and used one of its sand tanks in the cutscene, in gameplay, you're missing one of the 4 sand tanks.
Father, I have brought us honor and glory.
Your Majesty, you promised me my choice of the Maharaja's treasures. That dagger.
Surely you won't deny the lad a souvenir of his first battle. You may have your choice of all the Maharaja's other treasures. Except that hourglass. That will make a fine gift for the Sultan of Azad when we pass through his city. And some exotic animals for his menagerie. And a few dozen slave girls. Yes, that should be enough. I want no animals or maidens harmed until I have chosen. Let it be known, King Sharaman is merciful in victory.
Trust not a man who has betrayed his master, nor take him into your own service, lest he betray you too. I learned the truth of this to my sorrow, the day that we arrived in Azad as the Sultan's honored guests.
My friend.
My friend, your visit brings joy and honor to my poor and humble dwelling. If only you'd given me time to prepare a proper welcome.
The glories of Azad are famed throughout the world. And yet, the best is yet to come. I give you the Sands of Time. May the friendship between our kingdoms endure as long as time itself.
The sand, why does it glow?
I can tell you. Inside the hourglass is a marvel that no living man has seen. Alas, only the dagger can unlock the sands of time, and it belongs to a greater one than I. A young prince, dearer to his father than all the wealth of India. Perhaps he will oblige.
No. No! Stop!
Is it meant to do this? Alicia Sigataha!
The sands of time. I can undo what you have done. Give it to me.
So the prince is tricked into unleashing the sands of time by the Vizier, who is this game's main antagonist, and he will be the final boss as well. Right here, we see Farah running for her life with all these people. Unfortunately, those people don't have an artifact of time, so they're gonna be corrupted. And here we learn the actual combat system. Sand monsters cannot be destroyed just by quote-unquote killing them, just by knocking them to the ground and depleting their HP. Basically, all damage eventually leads to a knockdown. That is its natural endpoint. However, unless you use the dagger to claim their sand and absorb them into it, they will rise again every time.
Each time I struck them down, they rose to fight again. I soon realized that only by taking into my own dagger the sands that possess them, could I liberate them from their monstrous living death.
Now, finish.
There are a few useful combat techniques that we'll be abusing and spamming quite a bit. One of them is the vault kill, which is just you jump over the enemy and then you click sword and then you click dagger. Sword and dagger are actions on two separate buttons, so you just jump, sword, dagger, and then you can pick them up. You can also knock them down by doing jump, sword, sword, and this puts them on the ground temporarily. And it kind of acts as a bit of crowd control. It's one of two primary means of crowd control you have, other than outright killing a foe, which, you know, obviously they're crowd controlled because they're dead. You know, they can't do anything. There are also wall interactions. You can do a torpedo attack off of a wall like that by jumping into it and then clicking sword, or you can do a dagger attack off the wall, which we don't really do. And the last off-wall action you can do is an off-the-wall vault, like a wall rebound, where you fling yourself off of the wall, you sail over the enemy's head, and it kind of acts as a vault over, but without interacting with the actual enemy. And there is a reason that is useful, which we will get into later. But anyway, every time the prince enters a save point like this, he sees glimpses of the future, which for the player acts as hints of what's to come and kind of gives you glimpses of upcoming puzzles, upcoming platforming sections, upcoming fights, and so on and so forth.
You think me mad. I can see it by the look in your eyes. You think my story is impossible. Perhaps I am mad. Who would not be driven mad by horrors such as I have lived? But I assure you, every word is true. Wait! Come back!
So there is a cool little skip here, which for me is quite inconsistent, so it was really risky for me to do this, but because this is a segmented run, it's actually not that risky. I just went for it. Sometimes he doesn't grab this pole, instead he just takes damage from it.
The guest rooms, where my father, all our entourage, and I should have passed the night lay cold and silent. The sands of time had swept through, stealing life and warmth from everything they touched. And I, who unleashed the cataclysm, had been spared. Were there others like me, who yet clung to life, hiding in fear among the ruins? It did not seem so. Stop! Had I really seen her? Or had my senses given way under the burden of horrors too great to bear, and conjured up a phantom? Either way, I could not rest until I had found her again.
Essentially, the prince is agonizing over he and Farah being the only survivors of this horrible calamity, and she keeps running away from him, and he's like, I needed to find her because she's the only one like me who's flesh and blood, right? Everyone else turned into zombies, essentially. One of the clever things this game does narratively is the entire story is framed as him telling a bedtime tale to someone else, basically. And who this person is, you don't find out until the end of the game. This fight is technically skippable, but I'm still going to fight these guys for a reason I'll go into now. On the right of my sand tanks, you see there's these little moons, these crescents. Those are power tanks. The only way to gain new power tanks is to kill enough enemies. So there, I built my first one, but I'm not going to use it here. Power tanks are mainly used for 2 powers.
I soon discovered that when I had collected enough sand, the dagger gained the power to stop time. Not for me, but for the enemy I struck.
So just like the prince described, if you stab an enemy with the dagger while you have power tanks filled, it will burn one of them, and it will cause the enemy to freeze, essentially. It's a stun, and it lasts for quite a while. And from this stun, you can uppercut them into the air, you can cut them in half while they're in the air, you can vault over them and slash them in half. That way, it kind of acts as a very fast, instant kill. The issue, of course, is killing an enemy this way prevents you from taking their sand, and it is less efficient.
Whence came these visions that assaulted me thus like fever dreams? Each time I awoke feeling drained and beaten, and each time what I had seen came to pass, as if the sands of time were giving me a glimpse into my own future.
Power tanks, a full one, is used when you stab someone with a dagger, but you only get half a power tank on every retrieve. Instead, a really smart thing to do is to freeze an enemy, flick them up into the air, and then let them fall on the ground. That way you can retrieve them with your dagger once they're unfrozen, pretty much. So you get the best of both worlds. You get the crowd control, but you also get to take some of your sand back.
Give me the dagger.
Who are you?
I am Farah, the daughter of the Maharaja from whom you stole it. This is your doing,
I saw my father turn to sand.
and we will share his fate if you do not give me the dagger to undo what you have done.
Your traitorous Vizier used the same words. From now on, I trust no one but myself. Run! Go back to the reception hall. Wait for me there. Go!
Alright, so I'm gonna fight these scarabs. As you can see, they don't actually need to be retrieved, and that's both a blessing and a curse. They're very fragile little buggers. You can technically run past these guys too, but I fight them once just to show you the general idea.
Now I remembered her. Since we left India, she had been there. In the desert, I had felt her dark eyes upon me. Now, here she was again. She and I, the only two survivors. Did I say two? Excuse me. We are three.
This is one of the first lengthier movement sequences, which we will get to as soon as this cutscene finishes.
The hourglass. What? I did not understand the meaning of what I had just seen, but I knew, with a certainty I could not explain, that those winged creatures had a master. The man who had tricked me into opening the hourglass now had his prize, and for some unknown purpose coveted the dagger as well, would stop at nothing to possess it. Well, I would give him what he sought. I would plunge it into his foul and treacherous heart.
The Vizier wants the dagger because, as we saw in the first few cutscenes, he's dying of tuberculosis, and he wants to be immortal. He fears his own death. He's heard legends and tales that the dagger can confer immortality on a person by, infusing their heart with the sands of time, which we will see in Two Thrones, which is the final game in the Sands of Time timeline. That's a weird sentence, but you get the idea. So a no damage run of this game entails some simple things. Don't get hit, basically, and don't take fall damage. And ideally, don't die, because that is lethal damage. So in terms of combat, right now, early in the game, most enemies are not able to counter our attacks. I'm just gonna briefly talk about what happened there. That was a rewind. I don't necessarily count rewinds as damage because I didn't take any health bar damage there. I do use a rewind to save myself about 3 times throughout the run. It seems kind of a shame to not use the rewind since it's kind of this game's unique, fantasy, right? Imagine if I recorded a playthrough where there were just no rewinds in it. It would seem kind of pointless. People would start asking me hey, you're playing this game, but you're not using its its signature mechanic. What's up with that, right? So if only to make sure I don't get any of those comments, and in order to showcase rewinds and to explain, how they're used in actual gameplay, I do use the rewind to save myself and Farah once or twice, but it's usually just to get out of a bad jump or to rewind an unfavorable positioning in a fight. So these dancers, they cannot be vault retrieved. That's why you see me knocking them down. They will always block sword dagger combos if you try to do it to them. So instead, you have to knock them down and retrieve them when they're on the ground. So this is the first time the game really uses a genuinely mixed enemy composition. Previous enemies you could kill however you want, but dancers cannot be vault retrieved, and that's why you have to see them a little bit differently. These normal enemies can be vault retrieved, so that's what we're gonna do. Dancers can also be torpedoed, be knocked down that way, arguably a little bit faster. I am going to move this shelf out of the way because that's our route forward. And then save here, and then load. Then we'll be on our way. So this next section has a puzzle, I guess. I don't know if you could really even call it that. But there is a kind of puzzle coming up that is really slow and annoying to play once you've already beaten it once. So this is the kind of segment where you just don't want to be re-recording it over and over again. That's why I will save both before and after this puzzle. So it concerns the Azad defense system, featuring the best voice acting in the gaming industry. You guys ready for this?
Oh, thank God! I was afraid you were one of them! Can you help me activate the Azad defense system? It'll take both of us to do it! I'll reset the axles for you! The man who's normally in charge of this got... Never mind! Ride the platform down to the bottom, then use those two cranks to bring it back up! You see those 4 axles? You'll need to pick them up one by one until you've got all 4. Then, bring them up to the top together. Make sure you pick them up in the right order. That's it. You've got the first axle. Now, pick up the other 3! Remember, pay attention to the grooves! That's it! One crank turns the platform! The other one raises and lowers it! That's 2! Just one more! That's 4! Now, bring them up to the top and line them up with their gears!
And then he gets really, really hype.
That's it! I knew you could do it! Now, there's one last step. Do you see that platform? Throw your lever, and I'll throw mine!
What manner of machine is this?
Ha!
I'm particularly charmed by his transformation sound.
We did it! Serve those accursed demons right! Oh, by God, they'll rue the day they ever dared attack the palace of Azad!
So this is how the game justifies there being all kinds of traps from here on out. I'm just luring this guy out so I can show you what a knockdown from a dagger freeze looks like. So we'll retrieve this guy, let the other guy fall down, and retrieve that guy. This basic flow is why stabbing someone with a dagger is so powerful, because what it lets you do is, while one guy is taking his time to fall down to the ground at a leisurely pace, you can do whatever you want to other enemies. It kind of lets you, in a way, like, stack actions together.
Why did I listen to that madman? The palace's defenses had a twisted logic of their own. They could be circumvented by using the strategically placed switches, which I soon learned to recognize. Yet it was hard to escape the feeling that I had made a terrible mistake by setting in motion such a deadly system of traps, which seemed in truth more likely to claim my life than that of an invader that was not flesh and blood.
Now, why all these traps are suspiciously placed in locations seemingly specifically to target someone who has advanced parkour abilities, you know, just don't worry about it. All of these guys can be vault killed. So you see those red polearm wielders. So the thing about them is that they're not terribly special, but they have blue brethren who are devastating for a reason that we will cover as soon as we get to them. But essentially, just remember this polearm wielding enemy, and remember that future iterations of them, we will not be able to vault at all. Here though, this fight is just easy money, easy power tank building. I'm trying to be flashy and get some kind of wall rebound kill. But in reality, if I wanted to be super fast, I would have just vault killed all of these guys. Once we finish this fight, we need to make our way up this little garden area, up through all the little floors, so that we can get back into the reception hall, as the prince told Farah to wait for him there. We're gonna flip this way, jump over here. Some more traps will be introduced. This is the spinning blade. You can either roll under these, which is what you're supposed to do, or you can just wall run over them. That's a sand cloud down there, but we are not picking it up because this is a no upgrades run. Gonna jump off this wall in order to grab that pole, which is a switch. Let us continue this way. Climb up here, run on the wall, jump off the wall, grab the ladder. Run here. We're just gonna do a diagonal jump this way. There's both a sand cloud and a life upgrade to the right there. We're skipping both of them because, again, that's just not what we do in this playthrough. We're gonna be playing the whole game on the weakest possible health bar. Not that it matters since we're not taking any damage, and also only having 4 sand tanks and 4 power tanks. How many power tanks you have is determined by how many sand tanks you have, which is both a good and bad thing. Now, instead of trying to avoid this trap, we're just gonna jump this way. Nice and easy. Skip it, don't have to worry about it. We run when this trap roughly reaches the little horizontal line on the wall there. See, it's past the line, we can run, good stuff.
Farah! Can you hear?
Here there's another trap gauntlet. So we'll begin by waiting for this one to go below the line, run over it. Wait this trap out, roll under it, run on the switch, jump off. Over here, what we're gonna do is wait for the nearest one to be just below the line, and then we're gonna run. And here is the first boss fight. This represents quite a difficulty spike for most players, and I'll talk about it once this cutscene is over. With the exception of Sharaman himself, blue enemies cannot be vaulted. They will cut you down if you try to do it. And this is why we've been building power tanks thus far. What I'm gonna do is try my best to kill enough reds so that I can build my third power tank. There we go. And now I can crowd control the blues. If you stun a blue enemy, you can jump over them. And you can also flick them like this. Ooh, narrowly dodged that attack. Dodged it by vaulting out of it. I'm gonna come over here, retrieve this guy. So, by retrieving enemies you freeze, you essentially get a little bit of a rebate on, you know, on your used power tanks. You get back half of it. So essentially, you get a stun for 50% off. That's a pretty good deal. We're gonna try our best to be taking down as many of these enemies as we can. Let me see if I can. No, I probably can't anymore. I'm trying to be very careful here and just lure these guys away from me. Lure the blues next to walls. We can do wall interactions in order to take them down more easily. You can come over here. Stab this guy, flick him up into the air. I'll just cut him, because why not? That should be most of the enemies dead. There is a faster way to kill Sharaman, but this is very, very safe, and it keeps him locked down and stunned in perpetuity. So you can just jump over him, sword dagger, jump over him, sword dagger, until eventually he won't block the dagger. And he's done.
I'm sorry.
Why?
I know what it is to lose a father.
That was not my father.
What are you doing? Stop!
So, this is the thanks I get for saving your life.
You don't understand. I need that dagger to undo.
To undo what I have done. Truly you must think I'm a fool.
You are right to be cautious. But fight as bravely as you may, you cannot defeat this enemy. The sands will spread. They will consume everything. I have heard it said that you are kind as well as brave. Please believe me. Help me find the hourglass.
It is in the Sultan's treasure vault, atop the Tower of Dawn.
How do you know that?
I just know. Come with me then if you insist. But I warn you, I move pretty fast. You'd better keep up.
That's our destination, and from here on out, Farah will be with us. She'll journey with us for the rest of the game, barring very few scenarios where we are separated from each other. Farah is an archer, and she's basically like a support character. She will shoot enemies to kind of give you openings to attack them, but in this dialogue that I just talked over, the prince says, "Please don't, you're liable to hit me." And he's not just saying that, like, he's right. There have been segments where Farah just straight up shot me with an arrow by accident, and that segment had to be voided. So as you can see, I am building my final power tank now, which is also the final one we'll have for the rest of the game. Now, we've been bypassing all health upgrades, we've been bypassing all sand clouds, and although in some cases this is a weakness, like we have less rewinds, we have fewer power tanks, it is actually quite overpowered in a certain way, which we will get to very soon. There we go, all of our power tanks are done. I'm probably not going to end up using it here, although I might. We're just going to have to see. No, I think I just fight these guys normally. Essentially, once you have full power tanks, and both your sand tanks and power tanks are completely filled up, you can unleash a Mega Freeze, which freezes time for an entire area, and only you can move freely. And it's like your ultimate. You can dash between enemies. I accidentally hit slow-mo for one reason or another. Who knows, but we get some extra badass combat for a moment. It's kind of one of the nice things about Sands of Time. It lets you make your own Hollywood moments by like going into slow-mo. I don't know, it's just neat. Look at that. Those arrows, trust me, like you cannot put your faith into them entirely. If Farah's doing her little idle animation where she's like not doing anything and just looking around, that's ideally the state you want her to be in for a no damage run. Because it means she's not going to be shooting you by accident. So now that that fight is over, we are going to venture this way.
Stay there. I'll try to find a way in.
Because we need to find a way into the structure, so we're just going to jump on these poles.
She tried to steal my dagger after I saved her life. She would have left me there to die. Here I am, risking my life for her again. And why? Good question.
She tried to steal my dagger. He's so mad about it. I mean, I would be mad about it. Like, look, girls, you can steal my hoodies, but don't touch my knives. We're gonna skip this fight entirely. This is something we're not gonna be able to do all the time, because for the rest of the game, except when we're separated, we do have to protect Farah. And that's why we can't leave her in an area with enemies, usually. So it necessitates we fight them. But in places where we do get separated, we can just run past enemies, because now that we have all of our sand and power tanks built, we simply don't get anything from killing them. It's just a waste of time, and it opens you up to the risk of damage. Also, down there, where you saw those wispy curtains, there's another health upgrade, but we're not going to get it. This area represents the first major puzzle the prince and Farah have to work together to solve. So Farah is really skinny for some reason, so she can fit through these cracks. And in so doing, she can open new passageways for the prince, you know, open doors, open entrances, and kind of just help you out that way. She can also step on switches. Basically, she can interact with the same kind of switches and machinery that the prince can, but she does not have his movement abilities. So she can't wall run, you know, she's not acrobatic. She does jump pretty far, at the least. But yeah, as she says, like, I can't do that. And so instead, you kind of just have to work together using the skills that you do have. So she's gonna pull that one. Then we're gonna come over here. I just spam wall runs to climb up a little bit quicker. This creates another little trap gauntlet, and we are going to run over these spikes, run over these spikes, and then we're gonna come over here. Wall runs are very strong for avoiding most traps in the game.
Are you all right?
Both because...
I heard strange noises.
No permanent damage,
No
thank you.
permanent damage, thank you. I love that. Wall runs are very strong for avoiding many traps, both because they usually sail you right over obstacles,
Do you think you can
and they move pretty fast. So not only are you not touching the ground, you're moving quickly, which means it's great for avoiding lateral traps, you know, traps that move left and right, like those spiky poles.
Your turn now.
And of course, since during a wall run you're not touching the ground, you can just run right over spike plates. And even though they will trigger because you're moving too fast over them, it doesn't matter. You're not touching them, so you're fine.
Now pull the lever.
This puzzle is as simple as just pulling all the levers one by
I
one.
can reach this one. Your turn now.
There's another fight down here. And happily, we can vault all of these enemies because they're just red spearmen and hammer bros.
Stay there!
So the hammer bros are also kind of unique in that they will usually block quick retrieves a few times until they become open to one. But generally speaking, you would want to just jump, sword them like that, just like the dancers. The thing about hammer bros though is that they have this sweep which is really nasty, and you don't want to be in their way when they do it. I'm gonna retrieve this guy. I'll try to do a wall rebound but get blocked. Now I'm all nervous, so I'll do one of these. That gets blocked too. I'll use my Mega Freeze for the first time here. So you can see it just lets you annihilate groups of enemies. The green circle timer in the top left shows us how much time we have remaining, and when our time is close to running out, usually I just leave at least one enemy, you know, I just let them fall, and that way I can pick them up eventually. And this way I have at least one power tank for use. Generally speaking, you want to have at least one power tank at any given time, because that way if you get boxed in by enemies all around you, you can freeze a blue to vault over them. This isn't so important in the early game stages, like right now, but later when enemies are all blues and you can't vault any of them, having power tanks is very, very important. Because yes, they can surround you, and you want to be able to have an escape, and non-vaultable enemies become vaultable when you freeze them, so that way it lets you get out of the situation.
Careful. Oh no.
I'm alright.
Stop doing that.
See, Farah gets very concerned when we go into sand pillars because it's freaky, you know?
Where are we?
This was the Sultan's zoo.
There's gonna be a fight full of just hammer bros coming up ahead, and a new enemy will be introduced here as well. which are somewhat annoying, but they're not the most annoying. Like, we do have pretty good ways of dealing with them. But first, the task at hand, the Hammer Bros. We're gonna kill all these guys, if we can. Oh my god. I evidently need to get them out of this little staircase area. Farah is taking damage. Damage to Farah doesn't count against this run, because it's pretty much random, and it's very difficult to manage. Like, even if an enemy is standing right beside her for minutes on end, sometimes she won't take any damage whatsoever, and then sometimes if an enemy gets up close to her for just the briefest of moments, okay, that was lucky. Sometimes if an enemy gets closer for just the briefest of moments, then she can immediately start eating damage. The most important thing is that Farah doesn't die permanently, and the key word there is permanently. There is an occasion or two on which I use rewinds to turn back Farah's death, and kind of just hope that RNG blesses me and that she doesn't get killed the same way again twice. And it usually works out that way. But yeah, in one sense, Farah being damageable is not so great, because it means you sort of have to babysit her and try to protect her from enemies who are already hitting her. And then on the other hand, it's kind of a good thing, because she can draw aggro from enemies sometimes. And that is one less enemy attacking you. So these are birds, corrupted birds. Also forgive the game being weird. This is a 2000s era PS2 game basically ported to PC. Their cameras were notoriously awful for the most part. But yeah, birds are a new enemy type. They die in one hit when struck, because their whole thing is that they're just hard to hit and they require patience on the part of the player. Yeah, you can kill birds if you're standing on flat ground pretty easily by just holding your block up and letting them, you know, clang against your guard, and then once you deflect their attack, you can just slash them. Like, they close in, they attack you, and after attacking you, they're at the requisite distance for you to hit them with your sword. You can also just hold block, and Farah will snipe them all. So we move that box away so that Farah can go in the crack, and you will see her pop out in the little caged room over there on the right. So she can pull that lever and open this door for us. Thank you. Yeah, you do that. Alright.
The fabled menagerie of Azad, the Sultan's pride and joy. It had been one of the wonders of the world. As a child, I had dreamed of it and longed to see it with my own eyes. Now it was a place of terror, an abandoned ruin laid waste by the sands of time.
Here I am.
So we're gonna jump off this wall, flip all over these poles. We're gonna get a bit confused before realizing we want to go this way. Very nice. Run this way. Actually release wall run as I get to the end there, even though I probably don't need to, just because that would be near the end of the prince's, you know, run distance anyway. Run up this wall, eject, jump. I want to vault this railing. Turning this crank opens that door, and now we can make our way down there. We're gonna save because there is a section coming up that is a little bit annoying, but with understanding and patience, we can clear it pretty easily. First order of business is to pull this switch so that Farah can actually join us. This extends a ladder for her. And she can come up to where we are. Now in the next section, the prince is gonna say that he begins to feel drawn by the girl at his side, I guess.
If you have believed the rest of my tale until now,
it'll be overshadowed by combat noises.
That, as we made our way through the communications, I began to feel strangely drawn to the girl at my side. My reason told me to distrust her, She had good cause to hate me, yet she had proven herself a loyal companion. And I confess, I was grateful for the company of someone who, like me, was flesh and blood.
Yeah.
I can't reach
So I use a Mega Freeze there to kill all the Scarabs really, really quickly, because Scarabs are one of those enemy types that can just... they can hit you really randomly, and they're tough to gauge, for me, anyway. And I know that coming up, there is a combat section with no blue enemies in it, which means I can vault retrieve all of them, or nearly all of them. There's gonna be dancers, but the point is I can retrieve all of my burned power tanks in the next few combat scenes. So I have no issues just using Mega Freeze to kill all the Scarabs. We're gonna wait until these blades go up, right here, and then we have lots of time to walk, gently walk over these plates.
You did it.
I make 2 saves here. One, you know, for reaching this area, and another after clearing the requisite movement here. Just because I was a little bit paranoid and I didn't want to replay it all. Also because birds are annoying. I'm gonna block here, kill this bird. Once one is dead, the other one should de-aggro me eventually. Please, thank you. A little bit scary. Yeah, killing one lets you quickly make that wall run before the next bird sort of repopulates. I'm being very paranoid about not falling to my death. I'm not even using the quick jump. I'm just sort of turning carefully and then jumping. I'm gonna hold block. Come here. Good job. There are a few more. We're just gonna take it easy. We're not gonna be a hero. We're just gonna, you know, play very safe, very risk-free. And that should be it. Oh, never mind. I lied. There are so many more. I hope it's just these 3. Ooh, a little bit scary. Okay. And then I managed to hit it just in time. Either that or Farah shot it, but I can't really picture that. She's way too far below. We're on the wall, jump where the moss is. We're gonna save again. And now we can head into the baths. The baths are a cool area. It represents both some combat arenas and another puzzle space. Though these scarabs first we have to deal with. We don't have our Mega Freeze anymore, so we're just gonna take it very carefully and try to sort of stay out of Farah's way whenever we can. Because if the prince is between Farah and an enemy, there's always a chance that because her projectile is linear, it just hits you. And that's not fun.
What?
I engage with my dagger stab because it lunges you forward quite a ways. Oh, that freaks me out every time when I see an arrow just whizzing past me like that. I torpedo attack one of these. I'm very scared of these enemies. Like, individually they don't do that much damage, but on a run like this, taking damage at all voids the segment, so I'm just really trying not to get hit here. One of the best things I can do is effectively, like, tank for Farah. Like, I can sort of just keep their attention on me as much as possible, and then she can shoot them. Okay, blocked that one so I can kill it. Blocked that one so I can kill it. These scarabs take 3 hits to kill with our current sword, and one of the reasons these enemies are here is to kind of instill that in the player, is to remind you, be like, hey player, remember, right? It takes 3 hits to kill a scarab with your sword. And the reason why is because the baths gives us our next sword, which is not skippable, it's mandatory, it's not optional.
The baths.
So it doesn't count against a no upgrades run because you're forced to pick it up. There is no way to finish the game without it. You need it in order to break certain weak walls, and that aside, you know, you will be getting different sword upgrades as well, whether you want to or not. Like, they're placed in the way of switches and stuff like that. These are the chain guys. Honestly, they're not terribly different from just normals. Just the normal enemy that you can vault kill. But they look different, and their attacks are unique if nothing else. Their animations anyway. I think the chain guys do have a sweep, and they try to whip you with their chain as well. The baths are populated by dancers quite a lot. So Farah is getting herself surrounded by enemies here. In part because I'm fighting very close to her, but even when I sort of keep my distance, doesn't really seem to make too much of a difference. They still kind of go for her. Now she's getting owned by that dancer's flurry attack, so I just decide to mega freeze in order to save her life. I'm like, what can I kill here? Can I just slash these folks up? I'm gonna let both of these fall to the ground. Okay, never mind then. Come here. Sometimes Farah does enough damage to an enemy to give you a free knockdown on them. If they're slumped over like that, the next hit with your sword will always be a knockdown, and that's very helpful. Also, if an enemy is slumped over, vaulting over them causes a knockdown as well. So if you want to knock them down a bit more safely, you can kind of stack a movement action and a combat action into one by vaulting them, and it gets you out of whatever position you were in, and it also knocks them down without, you know, keeping you standing. Because if you were to knock them down with your sword, you'll have to, like, sit there for a second where the prince, you know, leaps up into the air and strikes down with his sword. If you vault them, it's much more instantaneous. Here you have to hold forward to roll, otherwise you will take fall damage, and we don't want that. By the way, since I haven't taken damage, I haven't gotten a chance to show or explain how healing works. The prince can drink any water in order to heal. And I mean any water. So he can drink from water fountains, he can drink from waterfalls, and yes, he can drink this bath water in the baths here, which is, you know, you can leave your Belle Delphine jokes at the door, okay? Like, just roll with it. He's got a hardy composition, this lad. So Farah having a height advantage here, being on top of the battlefield, is very good for us, because it means she has a much lower likelihood of accidentally striking us with an arrow. See, she can kind of like look at the enemies from above, and this lets her be a bit more accurate. And it helps us too, because this fight has more aggressively spawning and aggressively surrounding enemies than usual. Like you can see, I found it hard to move even. So it's nice for her to sometimes land an arrow on someone. Her arrows don't do too much damage, they act more of like an interrupt, like that. And then it just kind of lets us continue the combo, which is very helpful whenever she's actually landing her shots. So this fight, she has been a good girl. Oh no. Oh, that's scary. Please get me out of this corner. Okay. Yeah, the hit detection on some of these enemies in this arena is a bit weird. I am just going to do my best to crowd control some of these enemies. I'll get the knockdown. I'll come over here. Retrieve her. Vault over this guy just for the quick retrieve. Too late on that one. Enemies who have finished or passed a certain threshold of their get-up animation will become invincible. See, that's what I mean. She was slumped over, and then I vaulted her and she crumpled to the ground. So that is a very useful tactic that, you know, we will be able to make use of later. Yeah, so Farah basically says there's something glowing up there, and it's the sword that we need, because there is a crumbling weak wall on the left there, and we cannot break it with our current weapon. And we have to in order to progress. If only because we're running no major glitches. Any percent speedruns of this game can use first-person glitch in order to phase through walls, and they can also use zipping, which is when you overload the game's memory with a bunch of inputs during or before a rewind, and it kind of just lets you essentially teleport through the game world at insane rates.
It's going down.
So hitting all those switches causes the water to drain, which allows us to run up this wall, because you can't do wall runs if your feet are wet. The prince will slip instead. Here, we'll be able to climb this way and make our way to that switch at the end there. And there's also another one on the other side, like across from this part of the room. So once we're done with this switch on the right side of the room, we're going to go to the left side of the room and do the same thing. The obstacles there are a little bit different, but largely the same. So for one reason or another, even though I know for a fact you can drop there and then hold forward to roll, it would never quite negate the damage for me. And then when I streamed the game, you know, a day or two later, it did actually negate the damage from me, but while I was recording, it didn't. I'm not sure why exactly, so instead I just make my way over here and fall down in a way that is a little bit safer. And I draw my weapon in order to check my health bar, just in case I took damage. If you see me drawing my weapon for any reason while there are no enemies around, it's usually because I want to check my health bar. I want to see if I've made a mistake somewhere that I just didn't notice. Alternatively, if you see me sheathing my weapons in combat, it's because of how auto-targeting works. So, in Assassin's Creed 1 to Revelations, which are, you know, this game's spiritual successors basically, you can lock onto enemies, and indeed, if you're in combat state, the assassin will automatically lock on to that enemy group, basically. If you unlock, then you'll put your weapon away. Now, in Sands of Time, it kind of gets conflated into one input, which is just putting your weapons away. So, if your weapons are out in a fight, the prince's movements become kind of grid-like, which you might notice. Like, he always faces an enemy, he moves by strafing, essentially, all the time. Like, he's always going to strafe and pivot around an enemy. But if you put your sword away, you have very free movement, and you can move wherever you want. Also, if your sword is away, you can roll very reliably. Whereas if you have your sword out, sometimes roll inputs will cause a vault instead if you accidentally tilt the movement keys or stick toward the enemy. Now, if this is a blue enemy, you've just voided your no damage. So instead, we put our sword away, and that way we can move more freely during fights. So you'll see me kind of fight, put away my weapons, get into another position, and then take my weapons back out. You'll see this more and more as we get near the end of the game, but right now we're roughly, a third of the way through. So you're not going to see it too often, because the enemy compositions that it'll be putting against me are not terribly challenging. They will be, soon enough. So here we have to solve this puzzle. We need to, get to that sword up there somehow. And the way we're going to do so is by chucking this piece of debris down here in order to use it to climb this ladder. And now normally what you're supposed to do is go through this little window, but we're not going to do that because that takes too long. Instead, I want to get onto this railing right here. I need to let my wall... Yep, there we go. And then we can wall run from here and then jump to this pillar. And that skips, not too much, but a little bit. It saves some time having to walk on non-standing surfaces like these, on which your movement speed is capped quite severely. Basically, the less of this kind of movement we do, and the more of this kind of movement we can do, the happier we are. I roll past the trigger for the camera shift, and that way I don't have to, get messed up by my movement input's direction. This game does not have tank controls, but it still features fixed camera angles sometimes, so it's a bit weird. I break those barrels with a wall run, and I also just wall run over these blade traps because there's no reason to slow down. Also, there's no reason to fight these enemies because we're separated from Farah and she's not part of this battle. And remember, enemies don't give us anything. There's no XP in this game, there's no kind of points system, there's nothing of that nature. You just skip the enemies you can because they are a waste of time and get back to the juicy platforming. So yeah, the prince just said, I can see the glow you're talking about, and it's over there. I didn't even need to roll there, which is happy. And we get our first new sword. Again, this is an upgrade, but it is mandatory. You can't really skip this if you're not glitching the game. So all players who play Sands of Time normally are forced to get this. But we're still on the weakest health bar, and we're still on 4 sand tanks and power tanks. This has a life upgrade. I'm just breaking this wall to show you, but we're not going to get it. So this is what this sword allows us to do. It allows us to break these weak crumbling walls. And the other thing it allows us to do is, I believe it kills scarabs in 2 hits rather than 3, which is quite the difference because scarabs don't just come at you 1 or 2 at a time. They come in big groups. So saving 1 strike on scarabs is quite good.
It said this palace was built on the ruins of an even more ancient one, but I thought that was just a story.
So I call this place the Under Palace. And we briefly have to venture through here in order to get back out. When we pull this slab this way, it exposes a crack, and Farah's gonna crawl through it. It also lets us traverse this way. I hold forward to get the roll so I don't take any fall damage. One thing I haven't mentioned about wall jumps until now, and I really should have, is that you can't mash or spam the jump button while doing wall jumps. If you mistime a jump input when you're trying to get wall jumps, the prince will flail and windmill, and you'll basically lose your ability to rebound. So instead, you just have to time it when the prince's foot actually touches the wall. You have a generous time window to make the button press. So don't rush, don't spam, because yeah, it's not a tight timing, it's not hard to hit. So just trust yourself. Okay, I try to put these scarabs between myself and Farah. That way she can shoot them freely, and also ideally she's not gonna shoot me because I'm not in her way. Trying to play very safely here. Get attacked by one. She's taking out some of them, yeah. Yeah, there we go. Moving this slab also exposes a crack.
Look, a crack.
And here, Prince is gonna put his life in Farah's hands. Or honestly, in her feet. Let's be real. Don't be weird about it, guys. But yeah, that she stands on that switch.
Can you make it?
Don't step off that switch.
And the prince says exactly what we're all thinking. Because if she did step off,
You made it.
those slabs would retract, and we would be super dead. Now this upcoming fight actually took me quite a few attempts to do no damage, because of the nature of the arena, and there are blue enemies here in addition to chain dudes. So our sword is a little bit stronger now, so we can kill enemies quicker, but you can see being surrounded by blues, not fun. I'm trying to just lure this hook guy here. Did I say chain dudes? Maybe it's just hook dudes. Anyway, we got the knockdown. Farah is being attacked, so I'm just gonna flick this guy into the air and go this way. See, if I had had enough battle experience, I would have sheathed my sword there so I could run to that dude quicker and more reliably. I tried to destroy that, this. I had one failed segment where these little sensors, or whatever they are, like these, I don't even know what they are, to be quite honest with you, or something, those poles, they actually got in my way, and I couldn't move because I was surrounded by enemies, and it caused me to lose that segment, which was very annoying. I'm gonna flick this guy into the air, stun this dude in the middle of his attack so that he can't finish it, flick this dude into the air, and then start grabbing all of those dudes that I knocked down. This is kind of how you want to fight blue enemies if you have the resources. On a no upgrades run, resource management becomes pretty important, I think anyway. Like, yes, you can also do wall interactions, but there is a small chance that those get blocked, and if an enemy blocks a wall interaction, then you're kind of screwed if someone else decides to attack you at the same time. Farah opened this enemy up to a free knockdown, so I will do so. I narrowly block that guy just in time. Farah actually saves my run here by hitting that dude. And once again, Farah interrupts that one. But she actually gets killed here, so I rewind her death. And instead, I run a little bit more this way without attempting any retrieves. Just to hopefully make these guys want to hit me instead. Thank you for the interrupt, Farah. I don't have a full power tank, which frees me to engage with a dagger stab because it doesn't do anything when you're empty. It just causes like an interrupt. It would have been cool if you could stab with the dagger individually of needing to burn any resources, but alas, this is a situational tech that we can use, you know, just to engage on a more distant enemy, and also a dagger stab is a very fast attack. It's kind of like a jab, it's a quick jab, whereas a sword swing is slower and you can get hit out of it. Okay, this place introduces what I call generals.
Mess hall.
I don't know if that's their official name, but I hate this enemy type.
Scant hours ago, these tables had been filled with men, joking in camaraderie over their evening meal. Just as my father's men do back home in Siraf, at ease because they think themselves safe within the castle walls with no enemy to fight.
So this enemy is pretty much just like the blue spearmen. However, they're even worse. They are more aggressive, they have different kinds of attacks, they have a sweep, they have an overhead, they are very aggressive at blocking. Like, if you try to hit them just with your sword, they will block nearly all of your attacks, especially this early in the game with this sword. Oh man. I'm stuck by those tables, and see, that's why having at least one power tank is very useful, because it lets me stun that guy and kind of just get out of the way. I use a wall rebound to do a retrieve kill on this guy. Like a vault kill, I mean. All kills are retrieve kills, so what I said there was very redundant. Anywho, I can quickly remove this guy, because I really don't like these big sword dudes. And anyone who plays this game has learned to hate them too. Now that enemies are mostly cleared out, I'm gonna try to get them away from Farah. Kind of just entice them to warp to me. Good, we got 2 on us, 3 on us. That's good. Take it easy here. Oh, these walls here in this area are a little bit buggy. I don't like them. Gonna retrieve this dude. This gives us 1 power tank. I'm gonna vault kill this dude really quickly. And now we can just torpedo attack most of these gentlemen. I'm just focused on getting them on the ground. I know that the first ones in the chain will get back up, but that's okay, because it lets me control them, it gives me a lot of safety. I don't want to torpedo and accidentally hit the fallen guy, so I will just do a wall rebound sword retrieve, and then get this guy. And that way we finish the fight, and we leave the fight with at least 1 power tank. So in case we really need to freeze someone, we can. This is the mess hall. It represents another movement section. Not so puzzly, mostly just movement.
You know I can't climb like you can.
Not much to speak of here beyond just the basics of movement. Stuff you've been seeing me do for the whole game. So, here is a drawbridge that we need to lower. But in order to lower it, we need Farah with us. And in order to get Farah with us, we need to somehow find a way to let her ascend, because she doesn't have the prince's agility. And in order to have her ascend, we need to clear this trap gauntlet. So fortunately for us, the developers put these pillars here, and it kind of just lets us do very cheeky things. Ooh. Easy there. I'm just gonna drop here and then come this way. Likewise, right here, we're gonna wall run just briefly enough to eject to this pillar. I'm gonna jump over here. And then here it's just spikes and spiky poles, so we can just wall run all the way over. Very easy way to clear that without, you know, your brain turning to scrambled eggs trying to keep all those variables in your head. If you're the kind of player who gets overwhelmed by a lot of moving parts and, you know, you find these platforming sections a little bit difficult, you can just do it the way I did. It's very, very easy. Because it gives you safe resting points and you don't have to, like, run the whole sequence in one shot. Although it does look more stylish and cinematically satisfying if you do run the whole sequence in one shot. Prince of Persia: The Forgotten Sands actually has a bunch of trap gauntlets, which I feel like you're almost intended to run in one shot. They are so smooth and so satisfying to run, for me anyway. I did save before proceeding, just because I wanted to, for my own peace of mind.
Now what? Yes, I was just going to suggest that.
So now that Farah has opened this door for us, we can drop the drawbridge. And this is one of the, again, one of the worst fights in the game, just because in this fight there are very few walls. The drawbridge itself, you know, the sides of it are just death, pretty much. And if you accidentally vault the wrong enemy or vault off of a wall, you can, first of all, if the enemy's not frozen, they'll just counter your vault and you'll take damage. But also, if you freeze the enemy and vault them, you can easily plummet off the edge and kill yourself, which is unfortunate. So we're gonna try our best to stick to this wall as much as we can. I'll get a wall rebound sword dagger combo on this guy. These guys are watching their spacing, their footsies, they don't want to get torpedo attacked. Successfully get a knockdown on this dude, at least I will retrieve him. See that? Very, very freaky. I'm trying to come over here to this wall so that I can... Oh my god, please. Oh no, this is really freaky. Okay. Okay, I just want to... Yeah, I'm not even gonna bother with that. It's time to get out because that's a bad area to fight in. We want to stay here until we get too surrounded by enemies, and then we want to go elsewhere until we get surrounded by enemies there. I'll do a rebound sword dagger combo on this guy. I wanted to get the knockdown on the other guy, but he got to his feet before I could do so. So instead I'll flick him up. And unfortunately the prince rebounded to the wrong enemy, but that's okay. We're gonna lure these guys over here. Torpedo attack. Again, when you don't have resources and you're fighting blues, it's very, very tense and tricky. One wrong move and, you know, you're done. But generally speaking, best practices are stay around walls if you can. Because if you stay near a wall, it prevents the enemies from surrounding you utterly, and it also gives you an interactable surface, you know, on one of your four sides, so to speak. Flick this guy up into the air.
Help me!
Get the knockdown on this dude. Retrieve this dude. Get the knockdown on this dude. Retrieve him as well. And I should be able to get the final retrieve on this fella. And that's it. That's a drawbridge fight. A bit of a taxing fight again. I would say this right here, along with the mess hall, is... Both of them are quite the difficulty spike for players experiencing the game for the first time. Just because... You know, you don't really know how to fight blues, and the game doesn't really teach it to you. It kind of teaches you through failure. Like, you're supposed to think outside the box and kind of, you know, think about it logically and systematically. Like, if enemies parry my vault overs, then what else can I do? And it sort of forces you to explore your other options. But some players just won't. Some players will attempt to just hit them with their sword, which just doing basic sword combos on enemies is a very ineffective strategy in general, even for normal enemies, because they can block them, and that's just, it's random when they block it. You don't know, you can't predict it, or at least I can't, and it's not something you want to gamble with, essentially.
I think I see how this works. Try pulling yours now.
This is yet another sort of co-op puzzle between the prince and Farah.
Now pull the lever.
Gonna pull this one. They have to work together to sort of ascend up this area. Gonna wait for Farah to pull her switch. Very nice. Now I can jump to here. Now I can jump to here. And the prince notices that his sleeve has been ripped a little, so he's gonna rip this one off too. This is something you're gonna notice throughout Sands of Time. The prince progressively sheds more and more of his clothing. Finally, some video game equality. I don't even know if I can make that joke, I'm sorry. But I mean, it's kinda true. Like, in one sense.
Hang on, I'm pulling mine. I'm coming.
I love how Farah takes her time, and the prince is just like, yeah, I'll just hang out here. No problem.
If you can fit under this gate, I'll really be impressed. I knew that hole was there. I just wanted to see if you knew.
Alright. So, along this bridge, there are more birds.
Keep running!
But as the prince says, keep running, we should actually follow our own advice and also keep running. Because if you run past these birds, this bridge crumbles, and in so doing, it kind of takes many of them out with it. Why this happens necessarily, who knows? I guess the implication is that the pillars hit them. But whatever the case may be, most of these birds end up dying. In fact, I think there's only like one left, if any.
It's broken.
Very funny. Come on, open the gate.
No, I mean it. It's really broken.
So Farah can't open that gate because the switch for it is broken.
All right.
So we're gonna go this
Go
way.
on down. I'll find another way in.
Try not to take too long.
So here's a clever use of the wall jump. You can actually use it to descend if the walls are far enough apart. And there is another point in the game where this is the case. We're not going to be there for quite a while. I just think it's a clever recontextualizing of an existing mechanic. It's something that, in my eyes, all the best
up
video
here.
games do.
Down below, there's a great open balcony. Come on, I'll show you.
Easy for you to say.
Prince, please. Thank you.
Here I am.
Stay there. I'll come down to you.
I know where I am. This gate leads to the baths. Do you think you could find your way there?
Of course, finding my way to the baths from here should be easy.
Good. I'll meet you there.
I'll just ask the first sand creature I run into. Could you direct me to the baths, please? Well, thank you. Don't mention it. I used to be a bath attendant back when I was alive. I'll meet you at the baths. She orders me around as if I were a servant. It's my own fault. With women, you need to show them you're in charge right from the start, or they'll walk all over you. I've been too indulgent. Probably because I felt sorry for her. Well, it stops now. From now on, she'll have to toe the line. That is, assuming I can find her.
This area took me a number of attempts to figure out, both because I was trying to do it in either one extreme or the other, or I just wasn't really giving it as much attention as I should have. At first I tried to fight everything, and that didn't work out too well. It was too slow, and if I failed I would have to do the whole thing again. And then I tried just running, but that didn't work either because a bird would clip me, until I discovered this. If you see a bird rear up like that and get its claws ready to attack, you can drop down onto whatever beam you're on, like, you know, hold it with your hands, and it will always miss you every single time. This is super abusable, and I'm really happy I figured it out. It kind of makes birds a non-element, so for some people it might be a bit too cheesy, but I really laughed when I discovered this tech because it's just insanely strong. With this, you don't ever have to fight birds on beams, pretty much ever again, and if you do, it's still really easy, because you don't actually have to time anything anymore. You just do the dodge, and then they're in position for you to slash with your blade. As for these scarabs, whether they hit you or not here is kind of random, so this is one of those unlucky little instances of, you know, the game just deciding to do what it wants, and either you get lucky or you don't, which is all the more reason why this run is segmented. I make sure to bait out this attack so that I can get the dodge on it first, because one thing I don't want to happen is for this bird to lunge at me while I'm in the middle of my own jump. They really don't care if you're in midair or not, they'll just cancel your momentum and you'll plummet straight down. So just don't worry about it, don't risk it, leave it alone. I draw my sword because there's a weak wall we have to break here.
Oh, have you been waiting here all this time? I didn't realize you meant these baths. I went to the other baths, clear across the other side of the city. I had a lovely wash and a rub with fragrant oils. Too bad you weren't there. Stop talking to yourself!
So, the game will soon introduce another enemy type, which is the absolute worst enemy type in all of Sands of Time, and it's bat swarms. You can't attack these unless you let them get close enough to you, but if you let them get too close, you'll take a bit of damage. Usually, if you're on flat ground and you're doing a normal playthrough, this is not an issue, but most of the time, bats do not attack you when you're on flat ground. They attack you when you're on non-standing surfaces, and when you get hit from one of those, you tend to just fall all the way down and die instantly. That aside, even when we're on flat ground, it doesn't really help us that they do so little damage because we want to avoid all damage whatsoever. So fighting these guys is kind of a pain because there is no cheap strategy for them like the birds. You kind of just have to do it. You just gotta play and do what you have to do. If you're feeling paranoid and panicky, what you can do is slash with your sword a few times, and this tends to scare them away a little. So even if you don't actually kill any of them, waving your sword around will cause them to, you know, back off a little bit, and it buys you a few more seconds of free movement. when a bat swarm is thinned out to 3 bats or fewer, the rest of them will fly away, like that. And for our purposes, this essentially means that the player has killed them fully. So yeah, bats don't appear in the game too frequently, but whenever they do, they're always awful. This area used to give me a lot of trouble years ago, but I kind of just learned that if you stay calm and do what you're supposed to do, you have a lot of time. If you panic and freak out, then the platforms will fall because you're wasting too much time making sloppy inputs. But if you just stay calm, you can run through the whole thing. You even have enough time to kind of save yourself. At least on the last one. Here's some more bats. I'm gonna let them get close. Slash once, sheath my sword and keep moving. And then I'll do the same thing again. This swarm is really easy to thin out, so I'm grateful for that. Because having to sit there slash after slash doesn't strike me as a good idea. I mess up twice here. But this is what I mean, you have a lot of time to save yourself. Run on this wall and just jump at the shadow. Like usual. By now, a player would have gotten used to the way Ubisoft telegraphs certain jumps. There's a lot of jumping from spike to spike over here. I want to call these icicles, even though they're clearly made of stone. Skipping the sand cloud again because we're not getting any of those. This descent is also really awful. Here, there have been a few attempts where the prince would just refuse to attack the bats in the way that I wanted, mainly because there's all this furniture and random junk in the way over here. So what I do here is I get on this ladder and I turn around and quickly eject to this platform because this is outside of the bat's aggro range and this makes them forget about me, which is very nice. Down here though, we do not have such cheap tricks. So even once we run over here, we're just gonna have to slash these guys up a bit. I'll run to the next platform. Take my sword back out. And there we go. I kind of got lucky there. If they had been a little bit more aggressive, when my sword bounced off the wall, they would have damaged me. But fortune was with me that day. This upcoming area is full of long falls, bats, annoying traps, you name it. So, while it's not super challenging on a normal run, it is very easy to void no damage here. Also, technically, you can jump directly to that save portal. I'm actually really happy I learned so much stuff about this game. It's a game I've always really enjoyed, but playing it again this year, like, I learned so many cool things and so many tricks and so many little details that made me enjoy it more. It's actually, there's so much to understand about this game that I didn't realize existed. You know, like, when I was younger, I kind of assumed this game was simpler than it actually is. But there is some hidden complexity and some hidden stuff that you can make use of, which I think most people probably don't know. Certainly I didn't, and I was like really passionate about this game. I considered it, before AC1 came out, this was my favorite game ever made. So if I didn't know all these things, definitely other people don't as well. Unless you are a hardcore Prince of Persia speedrunner, in which case you probably know quite a bit. That is where I learned a lot of these little tricks from. We're gonna pull up here and just hold left the whole time. This room can be tricky because of these bats. I like to lure them over here so that they all kind of come at me from a uniform direction. And also so they have time to collect. And then when they all group up, I slash them up. For this sequence of blades, what you want to do is the first one drop down once, the second one drop down twice, and then the last one drop down once again. Here's some more bats. Don't mind me hitting that box by accident. I'm freaking out here because I just got like a good segment on that previous room and I'm like, I don't want to lose it. But yeah, we successfully blew them up without incident. Hooray. You don't actually have to wall run. You can just jump right to it from that box. And it's actually faster because you don't have to wait for the prince's feet to dry. If you wanted to wall run, like before, you would have to wait for his feet to no longer be wet, otherwise you'd slip off the wall. There's a health upgrade to the right here, but we're not going to get it because we're not getting those. And up here is a fight that, weirdly enough, I kind of just take such a strange approach to. I began by actually just killing these guys because I'm like, why not? I can kill them. I have sand, you know. And then it starts only spawning blues, and I'm like, alright, cool, I have all the sand I want, I am out of here, I'm not concerned with fighting the rest of these guys. I'm trying not to get blocked off by these folks, but eventually I do, so I end up just stunning this guy, putting my weapons away. Right here, I actually mess up this jump. And I'm like, no. Rewind that. Jump properly. And we're over here. But yeah, this is like one of 3 or 4 times I actually use a rewind to save myself. I think it's neat. It definitely adds like a little bit of spice to this playthrough. Because, again, it is this game's selling point, or its like unique mechanic. Other than the movement, of course. So we emerge into the Sultan's Harem, and of course everyone here has been turned into sand monsters. Rip to them. So Farah and the prince are talking to each other through a wall, and she's being attacked, the prince is being attacked, and the idea is you want to finish this fight fast enough to get to her before something unseemly happens. I wasn't fast enough to retrieve that dancer, so I just retrieved the blue instead. Gonna get her now. I have a lot of resources, so I'm not worried at all in this fight. I would just really prefer if that guy was damageable finally, please. Okay, get the stun to cancel his attack. I'll retrieve these two as fast as I can. Since I'm full on sand, I'll flick this guy into the air and chop him in half because I have a surplus of resources. I'm gonna knock all these down and start retrieving them one by one. I'm too late on that one, I'll get this one instead. I'll stun both of these, uppercut them, and then I'll wait for them to fall down. Might as well rebuild one power tank. I'm trying to vault this guy so hard, and it just does not work out for me. So I'm like, whatever, I'll retrieve the dancer who's on the ground. And that's it for this fight. Okay, now we actually have to reach Farah. And in order to do that, we have to open this gate. In order to open this gate, we have to slash our way through several weak walls. And we gotta do it fast, because she's gonna start losing HP.
Stay there! I'll come to you! Are you there?
Unfortunately, I hadn't played this game in a really long time, so I'm kinda getting a little bit lost here, but I still end up getting through it quick enough. I do think it's really clever how they hide some of the openings and some of the walls behind curtains, and you kind of have to like poke at it with your body and see if there's anything behind it or if there's like just an opening there.
What took you so long?
I very quickly murder these two blues. Gonna quick retrieve this chain guy. Knock down the dancer, retrieve the dancer. I didn't really intend to rebound kill that guy, but it did successfully dodge me over the dancer's slash, so that was ultimately a good thing. Because this area has mixed enemy compositions and there are a lot of enemies which are not immune to vaulting, I'm being a lot more liberal with my resource use because I know that I can just get a quick retrieve.
Help me!
Farah's been taking damage, but she does set up this blue for a knockdown, so I get the knockdown. I was very lucky that blue's attack didn't reach me. Get the knockdown on both of them. retrieve the dancer, retrieve the blue. And I think that should be it. No, there's a little bit more. I think it's just these two in the chain. He warped to me, which is really good, because it means he's not aggroed on Farah anymore. Ooh, very dangerous. I'm trying to get out of that area, because accidentally getting a vault input on a blue is not what we want. That dancer is too late to retrieve, so I'll just knock down her buddy and take her instead. This fight is long, but it's not super difficult. Mostly what makes it feel longer is that it comes right after the previous one. I'll uppercut this one, knock down this one, get the retrieve, and the final one falls just in time. And that's it. The Prince and Farah have a cute moment here.
My love, please don't leave me.
What did you call me?
It doesn't matter. The important thing is, I know how we can reach the Tower of Dawn.
Of course, the hourglass. All right. But this time, stay with me and pay attention. Can't spend all day chasing after you.
Because of what the Prince just said, Farah is going to be super bratty here.
Well, what are you waiting for?
I'm afraid. What if I get into trouble and you have to come chasing after me?
Please.
Do you mean to say you actually need my help?
Yes.
Oh well, in that case. The gate's open.
I'm afraid. What if I get into trouble?
Alright, so this leads into the Hall of Learning, which is my favorite area in the whole game. I think it's actually most people's favorite area in the whole game. I feel like, you know, if you were to throw out a poll and it's like, hey, like, what is the most memorable, the most coolest area in Sands of Time? People would be like, oh, the Mirrors Puzzle, or like the library.
All right.
And yeah, that is the Hall of Learning, which is right here. We actually have a very cool fight right here, in addition to me having played it so much that I've basically optimized like a glitchless playthrough of this zone.
We must have come out the wrong side of the baths. We'll need to go back through the royal palace.
All right then. Let's find the way out.
Of course, whether something is optimized or not is relative. Like, this is optimized relative to like a normal player's gameplay. I'm sure there are quicker ways of doing it, even glitchless, but, you know, for my purposes, it suits me just fine. So once again, we have mixed enemy compositions. We have reds and blues. We can vault the reds, we cannot vault the blues. So we're gonna knock down all of these blues and just like retrieve them all. This is a red, so I can take him. I'm gonna CC this blue, uppercut him, grab the one behind me, uppercut this one. Here's another red, so I'll take him too. Staying in this little area just makes it very, very fluid. Unfortunately, his buddy warped in front of this guy and prevented me from getting the retrieve. But that's okay. I'll take the one behind me, and then I'll use this wall to get out of the situation. Farah's being very helpful right now. She just used an arrow to interrupt whatever that guy was doing. Set me up for the free knockdown. Good girl. Grab this dude. I tried to torpedo attack and I missed, but hilariously enough, these enemies can actually hit each other. And in fact, it comes into play a few times, although it's not something you can really make happen intentionally. But for example, enemies with sweep attacks can knock down other foes who end up falling in their hitbox, which is very, very nice. Farah managed to keep herself safe just long enough for me to stun the guy that was attacking her, which is good. I have 2 power tanks, so I'm going to use them both, uppercut both of these guys, and then I'll wait. This will give me 1 full power tank, so at least I'll have 1 for whatever comes next. Enemies spawn in waves, of course, so being able to be ready for the next wave with some kind of resource is very good. Farah actually successfully knocked that guy down with her arrow, which is really, really nice because it lets us very quickly rebuild our resources. This guy is still set up for a knockdown, but I don't get it. I'm just focusing on his buddies. I think if I had played a little bit better, I would have actually gotten the knockdown on that guy. But it's possible that the auto-targeting screwed me over there and just happened to attack the guy beside him. Gonna backflip my way over here and take this guy, and that should be it. So the previous few sections have been very, like, loaded with combat sequences, because this one right here is a huge puzzle. It's a puzzle that spans, like, multiple floors of this library, and you have to use various mirrors to redirect light beams into different places, and it's really cool. Like I said, this is most people's most memorable zone in the game. It's a very unique setting, like, it's the only library in the whole game, and it looks really cool. Most of the rest of it is just like, you know, military regions or crumbling buildings and towers and ruins. But here you get to be in this place full of books.
She said my love. I know she did. I didn't dream it. At least, I think I didn't. It's quite natural, really. Her kingdom's conquered, she has nothing, no one to protect her. She needs me. I can see it in the way she looks at me. All I'd have to do is reach out and take her hand, and she'd be mine. Why am I talking to myself?
You did it. I'm up here.
So that is the next mandatory sword pickup. Once again, there's no way to skip this without glitching, so we're gonna be forced to get it, and it should make scarabs die in 1 hit rather than 2. You know, for the moments we actually need to fight them. So what we're gonna do is jump over here, wall run here, do a brief wall run to jump over here.
There's something odd about this bookcase. Look! It's the same symbol that was on the pillar.
Stay there! I'll come to you!
Before pulling the switch, I walk in order to, you know, get in position.
It's no use moving the
And then
mirror.
I just run into it like a fool.
Beam.
I can see that.
If you don't go to the very end of this beam and jump, you can end up getting onto this platform a little quicker. So I'm gonna slash at these bats a few times just to disperse them a little bit, and then jump over here, because this is outside of their aggro range and they will no longer attack me. Like, we don't really need to be killing
Where
enemies,
is
it's
that
just an
glow
incidental
coming
thing.
from?
What we need to do is solve puzzles, do movement, and get to the credit screen. If enemies happen to be, you know, in front of us and we have to kill them in order to progress, then we'll kill them. But if we don't, and if we can make them, you know, cease attacking us in some other way, then it's usually best to just do that instead, because it saves a lot of time.
Listen to this. Of what use is reason against the power of love? Love is life. So if you want to live, die in love. Die in love if you want to stay alive.
What's that supposed to mean?
I thought you'd like it.
If you want to be useful, try finding a book that'll tell us how to get out of here.
This isn't that kind of game.
Game? She thinks this is a game.
I'm pretty sure Farah breaks the
Stay
fourth wall
there.
here.
I'll come to
And
you.
the prince is like, she thinks this is a game, and he's like really mad about it, but I'm like, dude, you are in a video game. Like, she's right, you know. You can skip a little bit of platforming by just lining up with the corner here and just jumping off this way, because you need to be on these ropes anyway. I felt really good about myself when I figured that out. I was like, oh yeah, that feels cool. I really should have watched more speedruns and playthroughs of this game before running this myself, but I just didn't want to do like the respectable amount of homework. I kind of just wanted to play the game and see what I would come up with personally. And I feel like I came up with some cool stuff. We want to put these mirrors on like the scratch marks or burn marks on the ground. Basically just like the discolored patches of flooring. You want to be pulling the mirrors over onto those. Redirecting this final light beam pretty much solves this entire puzzle, and it should open the door downstairs.
You opened the gate!
There we go. That is not what I wanted. Thank you. Alright, and now all we have to do is get down. So I'm gonna run over here and then use this bookcase to get down. You don't actually have to do this. Where the broken part of the doorway is, you can kind of drop down over there, but you do have to do a roll input in order to prevent taking damage. And that's a little bit tricky to do unless you use the landscape camera. Once we have this sword, we're gonna pull this switch and head into the observatory.
Come on!
The observatory fight is a little bit weird. As you can see, there's not a lot of walls here, which is a problem because we do have blue enemies. And honestly, even if we had just red enemies, you can actually vault an enemy to your doom. Like, if there is just empty space or a cliff or death on the other side of that enemy and the prince jumps over it, he will straight up just fall into the abyss, and he'll be like, oh, oops, my bad. So yeah, be very, very careful if an enemy has their back to a cliff like that. See, like it almost happened to me right there. Just to, in case you think I'm, you know, lying about that for whatever reason. It's really, really freaky. Okay, successfully knocked both of these guys down. Now we can freeze this guy. Farah shot him, which is really good for us, because that keeps him in stun state for a little bit longer. And she shot him again. Her AI is really, really smart in this fight for some reason. Although, I have to say, I did lose this segment once or twice by having her shoot me in the back. Because, you know, she's trying her best, I guess. I forgive her. That was really annoying, though. Ooh, I can't really approach that guy because his buddy respawned. But maybe... Yes, okay, cool, got the retrieve. Ooh. Yeah, and see, he actually fell off the edge, so you can kind of ledge people too if you're really smooth with it. Gonna retrieve this guy. Trying really hard not to be standing between Farah and the enemies. See what I mean? Once again, like, vaulting here is just such a weird proposition. Got the knockdown on both of them, albeit in a very different way. Retrieve this guy too. And I think that should be it. Yep. Not the worst fight in the world, but you can see how the environment, like, does not do it any favors. So now,
there should be a way to make this
our
thing
goal
go
is
up.
to rise
See if
to
you
the
can find a
top
switch.
What makes you think
and figure out a way to open the gate at the
I
bottom.
found one? Shall I pull it?
Not yet! Wait till I'm on the platform! Now!
So there are a bunch of these astrolabes, or presumably like a model of the solar system, which is pretty advanced for an ancient civilization, if I do say so myself. We're gonna pull this switch this way, and this aligns these poles so we can swing off of them. It lets us get to the other switch, and then we're gonna push this one forward. And this aligns those poles so we can jump to the pressure plate on that wall. A simple puzzle, but a satisfying one. This does a lot of fancy spinny shenanigans, but at the end of the day, all it means is that now you can reach your objective. Conveniently, we land right on this switch.
The gate's open!
Look at me trying to, like, jump on this.
Here I come!
So the prince is having fun.
Ha ha!
Come on!
This is a funny exchange.
Look, a crack!
Wait, let's see where this corridor goes. Alright, you can take the crack.
Hilarious. It's like, wait, let's see where this corridor goes. Turns into a corridor full of traps. Yeah,
I'm
you
up
can go
here.
that way.
Try pulling that lever!
So this introduces yet another new trap, which are these swords that slide along walls. And one way of avoiding them, if they're short enough, is to just be running alongside the opposing wall so that you straight up just run through the negative space where, like, they're not occupying any space.
Do you think I can jump it?
Go on, try. What's the worst that can
But
happen?
another way to do it is to jump, to
There you
roll
go.
under them, not to jump over them. There's only one occasion on which we jump over a blade like this. But they are high enough to be rolled under. So if you have good timing, you can run straight at them and then just hit your roll button to dodge under them. It's a bit brave,
I'll meet you
but
on the other side
it's
of
exactly
that
what
gate.
we're gonna have to do here.
You be careful.
And then again, this one. There we go.
Here I am. I can't open the gate.
So this place has some mildly annoying enemies. And unfortunately, I didn't realize that I don't necessarily need to fight them. So you know what I'm gonna do? Yeah, I'm gonna fight them. Look at me trying to torpedo attack these guys for all I'm worth. And I could have saved like at least a minute or two on this fight. Or maybe not that long. It's not super long. And it does at least give me a save point, so I'm happy about that because it means I got to put a lid on that segment before trying this one. Because these birds up here can be really irritating. The worst thing about them is that if you're unlucky and you try to rush like I did right here, one of these birds has a tendency of standing kind of like in your flight path, quote unquote. So if you try to jump to the other beam, you can end up smacking into the bird in midair and then falling all the way back down to ground level, which deals a lot of damage to you, if not killing you outright. What's nice though is that these two birds we can just two-shot, by which I mean one shot for each bird. Bam, bam, done. In order to prevent fall damage, you have to do a roll down here. Otherwise, the prince will get a boo-boo on his ankle, and it'll feel bad.
I'm out.
Alright, now the nice part about this next section is you can skip everything here. It doesn't matter. You know how I usually say, oh, we can't leave Farah alone when she's like fighting enemies because they'll eventually kill her?
Well, she is a Maharaja's
That
daughter.
doesn't apply here.
A conquered one, but still, her blood is royal. Besides, what better way to tame her insolence? It's not so bad for a woman to have a little spirit. It's a challenge.
Here, Prince is like, oh yeah, it's actually cool that she's bratty. It makes me like her more. I mean, he doesn't say it in those terms, but like, that's what he's saying. So yeah, this next area, you don't need to fight anything here. You can just run all the way through. And you're probably wondering, oh, like, how is it okay to leave Farah behind? It's because we're gonna run into a cutscene trigger that, like, activates the next part of the game.
Look, that's the bridge to the
So
Tower
again,
of
there's all
God.
these enemies here. It's like expecting you to fight them, you know, have like a cool climactic, like right before the end battle. But we're not gonna do that. We're gonna run past these guys. We're gonna jump over here. We're gonna jump here. And see, she's among the enemies, but it doesn't matter, because we'll roll into this cutscene trigger and the prince will fall into the prison. And rip his shirt off, which is the most naked he will ever be for the whole game.
careful on the stairs.
I think the prince looks cool as fuck shirtless, I gotta be honest. Also, so does Ubisoft, because that's the cover art. Like, the cover art is him with his, like, baggy-ass pants and his shirt off.
A prison. In my father's palace was a prison much like this. I had never set foot inside. Now here I was, myself a prisoner, seeking an escape.
Look at that. That is a sick character model. I mean, it doesn't provide much armor or protection, but I guess he figured we're doing a no damage run as well, so it's not like he's getting hit. You can actually release wall run to fall onto that pole, and it's such a cool move that skips quite a bit of running around. So now we are in the prison. There's gonna be hammer bros and hook guys down here. My real reason for not speaking much during this fight scene is I just love this music. I'm just like jamming out. God, what a cool soundtrack. Anyway, so after we save, we need to pull this cage with what I assume used to be a human's bones in inside it, and pull it onto this pressure plate. What a grim and grisly place this is, truly. I love that one of the cool things about this game is that, like, the prince is, after all, like, the Prince of Persia. He's led quite a privileged and, you know, like, high and mighty life thus far. And many times as you go through all these areas and all these locations in Azad, which is like a neighboring kingdom, he's like, you hear him say stuff like, oh, I had never seen these things before, like I'd never seen such places. And this is his first time being inside a prison, inside a torture chamber.
A torture chamber. It was the first time I had seen such devices at close range, close enough to touch. Where were the men whose trade it had been to apply the question, to extract the answer their king sought, if indeed there was one? In the end, they had met the same fate as their victims, guards and prisoners made equal by the sands of time.
As he ventures through all of these places, all of these, like, you know, constituent organs of the body of a kingdom, as it were, he sees all this stuff that he's, like, been kept away from and sheltered from because he's a prince. Like, he doesn't need to know these things. He doesn't need to see these things, right? It's kind of irrelevant to someone of his position and his ranking. But as he goes through this journey and he sees all these things, it kind of, like, you know, he learns about it. It kind of changes him a little bit. He's like, damn, you know? He kind of sees the truth of the world and how, like, you know, to put it in some terms, he sees how real shit can be, yo. Alright, this fight is somewhat tricky. Now, on the face of it, you might be thinking, oh, it's just Hammer Bros and Blue Dudes. But the thing is, Hammer Bros don't always let you do a vault knockdown on them, just because of the way hitboxes are. And Blue Dudes are Blue Dudes, so, like, you know, they're just awful, they don't need to be explained, really. But we're gonna Mega Freeze and try to just get knockdowns. And then we're gonna go for the enemies in order of most problematic to least problematic. So Blue Dudes we do not want. We want to get rid of them as soon as possible, so that's what we're gonna do. Another awful thing about Hammer Bros is that they can kind of cover for each other. Like, if one Hammer Bro warps in front of another one while you're trying to do a vault knockdown on him, like, his hammer will straight up just block your attack, even though it, you know, like, who the hell is he? He just warped in here. Like, what the hell? Get out of here. Like, this soundtrack is cool too. It's called The Tower of Dawn. You can look it up on YouTube if you want. It's a really cool song because it's like, I don't know, I love this game's soundtrack, but I love The Tower of Dawn in particular. It's a great song because it kind of evokes this sense of, hey, you know, we're at the end. Like, everything is coming to a close, but we still have, like, a few really hard fights to get through. She's doing a great job shooting people this fight. Like, usually I would have to protect her a lot more. And it's really helping me out because it kind of lets us keep the enemy groups like split and isolated from each other. Right, so coming up is the hardest fight in the entire game. I tried this so many times that I was like, I don't even know if this is possible. Like, at some point I had that feeling of like, can I even do this without taking a hit? And then I watched some speedruns, and even the speedrunners take damage on this fight, and I'm just like, I don't know, you know, that's a little bit scary. But I kept fighting, and I kept dying. Well, not dying, but like taking damage and having to reset. You know, I kept fighting, and I kept fighting, and I kept fighting, and then eventually I figured it out. So, you know, it's all good. There is a fight that is even harder, but this fight, the elevator fight, this is hard for everybody. Like, I think this is an even bigger difficulty spike than the King Sharaman boss fight. When players get to this elevator, like, I don't know, just, when I was making this video, I put out a tweet and I was like, oh, the elevator fight is kicking my ass, dude. And I got a bunch of replies being like, oh, that fight is awful. It's like, I hate that fight. Like, it haunts my childhood. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Nobody likes this fight. So for these birds, I'm not even going to kill them. I just kind of hold block and, you know, walk past them. And Farah is going to follow me. Birds can't really kill her, so it's fine. There's a final life upgrade past that wall, but we're not going to get it.
Be careful!
Of what? Not everything is a trap, you know.
This is how this fight is gonna go. It's gonna spawn a wave of hammer bros. When we kill them, it's gonna start populating the fight with blues and with like blue polearms and blue generals, basically. And it's just gonna be just, I don't even know how to describe it. This fight is awful. I'm gonna make it look easy, but you'll even see me like hesitating at times or like trying to be careful, trying to stay safe. For one reason or another, Farah draws a lot of aggro in this fight. So in the second half of it or so, or maybe even before that, people are gonna start spawning next to her and just like ruffle stomping the shit out of her, so you really have to like keep her safe. See, like it's already begun and I'm like, no, you hands off of her, and I just mega freeze in order to mess with these guys. So what I want to do is ideally knock down as many of them as I can. As many blues as I can. Alright, so all of these guys have been knocked down. We're going to start retrieving them. I momentarily run on that wall in order to get to this guy a bit faster. I know I'm going to have to kill this dude, so I do so. Trying to no damage this fight is like pure adrenaline. By the time I finished a successful segment of this, my hands were actually shaking because I had failed so many times and I was like, oh my god, am I gonna get it this time? So yeah, you can see Farah has knocked that guy down over there, and I wanted to get to him, but his buddy warped in front of him to like keep him safe. So instead I just knocked his buddy down instead. I'm gonna get this blue. I'm gonna freeze this guy so I can retrieve this dude without being harassed. Farah is a hit away from death. I really don't want her to die. So I'm just coming over here to hit these guys as much as I can. Or to at least like bother them a bit so they look at me now. Gonna get a wall rebound kill on this dude. Same thing again. Like, this is why this fight is so scary. Farah is at 1 HP for so much of it, and she just regenerated a little. When she's not being attacked for a while, she does recover a little, so that's really good. I wasn't lucky enough to have the Hammer Bro sweep his buddy. Would have been really cool, but he warped out just in time. We're gonna get this guy. I'm gonna sheath my sword so I can get to her easier. This time the Hammer Bro did sweep his buddy, and I'm able to retrieve both of them, which is really lucky. Can get the retrieve on this guy because he just unstatued just in time, and that's the fight. It looks a lot easier than it actually is. Like, so much can go wrong here. The rest of it is just smooth sailing. Elevators reached its destination, so the Prince and Farah can finally return the sands of time to the hourglass. Or, you know, so it would go, if everything went according to plan. But it doesn't, because the Prince has a moment of doubt. He's like, you know, you should hate me, like, why am I supposed to trust you?
Come on, hurry!
The hourglass is nearby. I can feel it.
Feel it how?
I can't explain it.
Very clever of the Vizier to take the hourglass to the tallest point so that the Prince and Farah would have to work really hard to get up to it. I imagine the Vizier's thought process to be something along the lines of, in order for my plan to fail, the Prince must return the sands to the hourglass, therefore I will take the hourglass as far away from the dagger as possible.
There's no one here.
Now get on top of the hourglass. You did it! Take the dagger. Strike it into the center of the dome.
My father's army sacked your palace, captured you as a slave.
What?
You have every reason to hate me.
What are you talking about?
Now you want me to trust you.
Go on! There's no time!
Give me the dagger.
The dagger! He must not get the dagger!
I had faced my enemy. I had looked into his eyes, and I had lost everything.
A tomb.
You were there. The dagger was in your hand. Why did you hesitate? You think you're cleverer than everybody, but you're just like the rest of them. Those soldiers, all they can do is fight, destroy. Why did I trust you? Why didn't you trust me? Ow!
Sorry.
Where are you?
I'm right here.
Hold my hand. Don't let go. I didn't mean what I said.
No, you're right. All that's happened is my doing. I wanted honor and glory. I brought this on us.
You are brave and good. If this tomb is to be ours, at least the dagger will be buried with us. And we are together. What is it?
Nothing.
You're trembling.
I just don't like close spaces. There must be some way out of here.
When I was small, my mother taught me a secret word. She said that when I was afraid, All I had to do was speak that word, and a magic door would open. I've never told that to anybody.
I can see why. It's the most childish thing I've ever heard of. What was the word?
Kakolukiam.
Kakolukiam. You did that, didn't you? Farah? Ho!
So, some weird mystical stuff happens here. First of all, the prince runs down a really, really long staircase. And Farah is seemingly gone. And everything is kind of like weird and hazy and dreamlike. And then comes a puzzle that's basically the Lost Woods from Ocarina of Time, where you have to
Where are you?
listen for trickling water at each door,
Isn't it beautiful?
and then keep going through the right
Isn't
doors.
what beautiful? Where are you?
If you go through the wrong door, you'll reset to the beginning. So yeah, just run past them, listen for trickling water.
Stay here.
You can look up a guide for it as
What
well.
are you doing?
I'm looking for you!
I'm right here.
I'm checking to make sure this is the one. You know, listening for when the trickling disappears and when it returns.
Farah?
And that's pretty much what it's gonna be. We're gonna check each
Only
one.
we could stay here.
Farah!
Shall we take a bath?
What are you talking about? Where are you?
I'm here.
When you go through enough correct doors, eventually you will
Where are
end
you?
up on the second floor.
I don't see you. What the? All right, this is getting ridiculous. Farah?
Just take me in your arms.
Who are you talking to?
I've been waiting so long.
Can you hear me?
Why do you act so distant?
Farah? Can you hear me?
Don't you want to touch me?
Farah? Farah?
And there we go. We're gonna get this very pretty cutscene in which the prince does the one thing a rogue should never do, which is to leave his knife behind. But
Come on.
he does it in service of taking a bath with a pretty girl, so, you know. I would probably do that too, I guess. when he wakes up, something is amiss.
Was it real, that magical cavern? If it was a dream, then it was a dream we both shared. I know it was.
Farah steals his sword and dagger while he fell asleep due to
Oh no.
events. So yeah, you don't have any weapons here. She did leave behind her medallion though, so at least you're safe from sand corruption. Of course, the issue now is, if she happens to use up all the sand in the dagger, and then something bad happens, we will not be able to undo that mistake. So our first order of business is to get ourselves a new sword, and solving this mirror puzzle is how we're gonna do that. Redirect this light beam here so that it goes into that big pillar mirror. Drag this one over here. And push this one in front of it and drag it over to the other one. Gotta push this one forward a bit more so that lights up. And then we're gonna wait for all the energy to dissipate before picking up the ultimate sword. This sword is so badass, you don't even need the dagger anymore, because it straight up disintegrates whatever it hits in one hit. Like, anything you hit with this instantly dies. So you can see Farah climbing all the way back up the tower, because due to the prince's, lapse in trust, I guess, she kind of feels like she has to, put it upon herself to finish the job. And it's quite tragic, but that's just how it goes. It's kind of neat how, they give you a sword that kills everything in one hit at a time when you feel most uneasy, because Farah is gone and your dagger is gone with her. So even if a player doesn't really have a strong emotional connection to her, the fact that she took the dagger with her means that you're kind of missing half of your character. You kind of see the symbolism, right? It just makes sense. It works really well. You can't rewind, you don't have the ability to stun anyone, you can't slow-mo, all your time powers are gone. You just don't have the dagger, and you don't have Farah. And you don't realize, kind of, how nice it is to journey with her, in spite of her shooting you in the back sometimes. Until, she's running off on her own. Just trying to disperse these bats.
She must be using a dagger. Farah, be careful! Don't use up all the sand!
God, that quote breaks my heart every playthrough. Farah, be careful. Don't use up all the sand. And of course, she's going to. And it's not gonna end well. But yeah, we're gonna one-hit kill everything right here, just to manifest this save point for ourselves. So this climb up the Tower of Dawn took me quite a while to figure out as well. Mostly because there are a lot of BS ways of getting yourself killed or damaged, and you don't have the Dagger of Time, so you can't rewind anything. But I did figure out a cool little trick here, where you can skip a lot of this climb by running up this wall and then continuously wall jumping between these two obstacles, like the wall and this metal structure. And you can skip like a third of the climb by doing that, and it's really, really good. Like, it saves you having to go all the way around and slowly creep along edges. You don't have to do any of that. Just run up the wall, wall jump, wall jump, wall jump, and you're already up here. This is one thing I really enjoy about the Sands of Time movement system. Well, I guess all the Prince of Persia movement systems and the older Assassin's Creed games, where you can kind of interact with the environment even when it's not intentional, and even in ways that are not necessarily intentional, because mechanics exist which follow rules, and as long as you use the mechanics in such a way that it follows the rules, then they kind of act universally. Like, the actual objects and obstacles you use them on don't really matter, because you know the same interaction is gonna, you know, be consistent every time. So because I know that the prince can run up any wall, and because I know that the prince can wall jump between two, you know, parallel surfaces, I know I can climb up that area there, even though you're not supposed to go that way. Okay, so these bats are a bastard and a half. These are, right here, the worst bats in the whole game, bar none. These ones in particular are really weird because, for whatever reason, they can hit you after you slash them. And it's really, really weird. I don't really know how to describe it. You kind of just have to play this yourself to get a feel for it. But basically, that's why I slash twice every time. The first slash is to actually deal damage. The second slash is to scare them away because I don't want them to peck me or whatever the hell they do. This fight is once again optional because Farah's not here, but neither is my dagger, so I really want to kill all these guys so I can manifest another save point. You're gonna see me counter this guy's counter, and he's gonna counter my counter, and then I'm gonna counter his counter. It's kind of a cool mechanic, and it looks very flashy in Hollywood, but yeah, God help you if you miss one of those. And very good. I'm trying to isolate some of these enemies from each other so I can get vault kills on the hammer dudes. So far so good. I'm trying to drag this hammer guy away from his blue buddy so that I can very confidently vault him. There we go. And dead. Okay, this fight is over. We can grab the save point, and this is basically the final save point we'll get in the game. Well, no, we do get one more. Coming up next is a very hard segment. In terms of no damage, it's probably harder than the elevator fight. And depending on how you look at it, like if you squint just right, it might even be harder than the elevator fight in general. I've seen some people say this is the hardest part of the whole game. It lasts maybe like a minute or two if you're really, really quick at it. But I think because of my no damage stipulation, that fight, if I remember correctly, took me like minutes. Like, I don't even remember exactly how long. It felt like 8 minutes. Maybe I'm crazy, or maybe it just felt like that long because I was trying so hard not to get hit by some of the most annoying enemies in the whole game who have like 3 different moves. The worst thing about the upcoming fight is that it's only generals, and although you do have the Dagger of Time, there is no sand in it, so it's completely useless. And since you have a sword that only, like, insta-kills people, you can't actually retrieve anyone. Unless one of them knocks down their buddy for you, which is very rare.
Kakolukiam.
Farah, no!
So, Farah lets go of the dagger because the prince grabbed it by the blade and it was cutting into his hand, and yeah. And when he presses the button, there's nothing in it, so he can't even rewind her death. Okay, this fight, no joke, took me 2 full days of attempts. We have to be very, very careful. I'm gonna vault this railing to kind of get these guys to warp around a little bit more. I tried to counter kill that guy, but he blocked the counter. I get a rebound kill on this dude. And now I'm really surrounded by enemies, and I'm not liking it. Those rebounds and torpedo attacks, like, they look fancy, but do be aware that if you happen to do one toward a guard who is doing, like, his idle swing sword animation, that does have active frames, that does have damage frames, and you can get hit out of your rebound, and you can get hit out of your torpedo. And, like, everything that you just did, you're gonna have to do it again. So you can see me sheathing my weapons and then running around to try to, you know, get better positioning and stuff like that. Got a kill on that guy. This is basically what we want to be doing. Like, just, it doesn't matter if it's slow. We need to stay safe and just pick these guys off one by one. This dude's on the ground, so I'm gonna get a free retrieve, which is very nice. Not that I would, you know, use a sand tank for anything at this point. Okay, he does the sweep, which means he should be open, but he wasn't. I was too late on that. Still, I get the torpedo attack and I kill him that way. I almost get the rebound kill on that guy, but he steps just out of range. Oh no. Easy, easy. Okay. That guy, like, warped into me and knocked me down. It didn't deal any health bar damage, it was just a nuisance. And I had to get back up, but that could have been very scary. If a sand creature warps into you, it can, like, knock you down like that. Yeah, like there as well. You can't control where they'll warp. There's no real way to tell if they'll warp onto you or not. I mean, if you're standing still, there is a higher chance that they will. Can I get this guy? Yes. If you can, always try to whiff punish these guys for failing to land an attack. Ooh, very lucky rebound off that wall there. If I had been even an inch or two lower, the sword would have swatted me out of the air. Okay, it's getting a little bit too heated over there, so I'm just gonna escape in this direction and stand beside this wall. They keep doing the thing where they warp into me. Very annoying. Come here. Okay, I hit him from behind. That's good. If you hit them from behind, they usually can't block that. They generally block their front. And it's done. What a tense fight. It probably didn't look that way to you guys, but trust me, like, it is insane. And when the prince steps into this sand column, he just sees flashes of all the game's previous areas. And then, you know, he realizes what he must do. It's the only thing that there's left to do.
Bravely I had fought and slain my enemies. Honor and glory were mine. But though I fight until the desert sands themselves were red with blood, I could not bring back the dead. No. No.
The girl is unimportant. Give me the dagger, and I will give you power. Eternal life will be yours.
Live forever, and those I loved are dead and I to blame. I choose death.
And he rewinds everything, the whole game. Every cutscene, every area, everything.
Do not be afraid. This belongs to you.
The Dagger of Time. But it is locked away within my father's treasure vault. How?
Most people think time is like a river that flows swift and sure in one direction. But I have seen the face of time, and I can tell you, they are wrong. Time is an ocean in a storm. You may wonder who I am and why I say this. Sit down, and I will tell you the tale like none that you have ever
So
heard.
at this point it's revealed that she was the person he was telling the story to the whole time.
That is why I have come. To warn you and your father to arrest this treacherous Vizier before he betrays you and brings ruin on us all. His signal is a flaming arrow shot into the air. Prevent him, and my father's army will know the traitor has been unmasked. They will turn back.
A wild tale indeed. I have a simpler version. A Persian soldier, lusting for glory, entered the chambers of the Maharaja's daughter and was slain by me.
The Vizier has a different idea.
Your Highness, for your own safety, I suggest you flee.
Farah doesn't have her bow in this fight because you basically just woke her up while she was sleeping. So
I will handle this intruder.
the prince has to fight the Vizier himself.
Matrudevate mapahi.
Now the Vizier is a weird boss. He's not actually very hard, but he is a little bit random in what he decides to block and what he decides not to. Also, sometimes you can vault over him and sometimes he will counter your vault and you'll eat a little bit of damage. So generally speaking, I prefer to not risk that and I just want to be dealing normal sword combos
Your
to him.
exertions are most amusing.
If he counters, I'll counter his counter, and then we'll have like the back and forth.
Let him be brought before my father. He will judge. Vizier, I have commanded you to stop. Do you disobey?
I've taken orders long enough from a senile fool and a sniveling brat. Your father was a great warrior in his youth, or so he would have the world believe. A pity his son does not take after him. And then again, perhaps father and son are alike. Did you really think you could defeat me?
Careful. Don't tire yourself.
With one Mega Freeze, we can take out his final clone and then kill him as well. That was really, really lucky. The Prince has invincibility frames during the Mega Freeze animation. Otherwise, the Vizier trying to smack me over the head with his staff would have actually damaged me. But it didn't. And
so it ends. How will the Maharaja feel when he finds his only daughter slain by the son of his enemy? Do you have any last words you wish me to communicate to the princess before I kill her? Words of love, perhaps?
I'm not sure how the Vizier knows the Prince loves Farah. He obviously has some knowledge of the timeline.
I could have been.
Unfortunately, Farah remembers nothing of what happened. And from her perspective, it sounds like he just made all this up.
Take this. Return it to your father's treasure vault. Guard it well.
I owe you thanks. But why did you invent such a fantastic story? Do you think me a child, that I would believe such nonsense? I said I owe you thanks. You presume too much. Such a fantastic story. Do you think me a child, that I would believe such nonsense?
You're right. It was just a story.
Wait! I don't even know your name.
Just call me Kakolukiam.
So yeah, that has been Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time cleared without any magic fountains, no sand clouds, never taking any health bar damage. Yeah, I really enjoy this game. I hope you had fun watching this and listening to me talk about it. I will probably do some of the other games in the series at some point, but yeah, we're just gonna have to wait and see what happens. So yeah, thank you all once again very much for watching. I'll have links in the description for stuff that you might be curious about. Other than that, I will see everyone next time. Stay sneaky.
At night, I sleep and dream of you.
Bye.